I, 28F, found out I was not invited to the family reunion through my cousin Mark's social media page. He had posted a picture of the invitation. It was beautiful, with a watercolor painting of my grandmother's old house on the front. The caption read, "Can't wait to see the whole family at the estate next month." The whole family. Everyone, it seemed, except for me. A cold knot formed in my stomach. It wasn't just any party. It was at Grandma Eleanor's house, the place where I had spent every summer of my childhood. The place where I had held her hand during her last days. My Aunt Carol had appointed herself the new matriarch after Grandma passed away last year. She loved the power that came with it. She organized every holiday, every birthday, and now, the first annual reunion at the estate. She had always been difficult. She saw kindness as weakness and viewed every family interaction as a transaction. She had a special kind of dislike for me, I think because Grandma Eleanor and I were so close. Carol's son, Mark, was her golden child. Everything was for Mark. Any attention Grandma gave me was seen as a slight against him. The estate was the heart of our family, or so I thought. It was a sprawling old house with a wraparound porch and acres of woods behind it. It was where we all gathered. After Grandma's death, everyone just assumed it would be passed down to the family as a whole. Aunt Carol stepped in immediately to manage it. No one questioned her. It seemed easier to let her take control. Now, she was using that control to cut me out completely. I decided to call my cousin Sarah. She was usually a neutral party, caught between her loyalty to her mother, Carol's sister, and her own sense of fairness. She answered on the second ring, her voice a little too bright. "Clara."
"Hi.
"How are you?" she asked.
I'm okay, Sarah."
"I just had a quick question," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "Sure, what's up?" she said. "I saw Mark's post about the reunion at Grandma's house. I must have missed the invitation. Can you tell me the date and time?" I asked. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could hear her take a shaky breath. It was all the confirmation I needed, but I waited for her to speak. "Oh, that," she said finally. "It's just a really small get-together this year, Clara. Super low-key. Mostly just for the older folks." The lie was so obvious it was almost funny. I had seen the guest list in the comments of Mark's post. Dozens of cousins, aunts, and uncles had confirmed they were coming. It was the opposite of small and low-key. "Really? It looks like the whole family is going," I said, my voice colder than I intended. Sarah stammered. "Well, I mean, it just sort of grew, you know how these things go. I think Aunt Carol was trying to keep it from getting too big. So, she just decided to make it smaller by not inviting me?" I asked. The silence stretched on again. I could picture her on the other end, chewing on her lip, wishing she could hang up. "She told everyone you were going to be swamped with work," Sarah said in a rush, the words tumbling out. "She said you had a big project and couldn't get away. She said she was saving you the trouble of having to say no." It was a classic Carol move. She had created a narrative where she was the thoughtful one, and I was the absent, career-obsessed granddaughter. She had erased me from the family picture and painted herself as the one holding it all together. The hurt was sharp and deep. It wasn't just about a party. It was about my place in the family, my connection to my grandmother, and the home that held all my best memories. She was trying to take that from me. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about my grandmother. Eleanor was more than a grandmother to me. She was my best friend, my confidant. In her last 2 years, when she became frail, I was the one who moved back home to help. I managed her appointments, cooked her meals, and read to her in the evenings on that same wraparound porch. Aunt Carol and her family would visit maybe once every few months. Their visits were always short and felt like an inspection. Carol would walk through the house, pointing out things that needed fixing, making comments about the state of things. She never once offered to help. She just assessed the value of the property while I was taking care of the person who lived in it. After the funeral, Carol swooped in. She organized an estate sale for some of Grandma's belongings, claiming the money was needed for upkeep. She changed the Wi-Fi password. She started a family group chat about the estate. A chat I was not added to. Each move was a small cut, a quiet assertion of her new power. Being uninvited to the reunion was just the final, deepest cut. I got out of bed and went to the closet. There was a large wooden box on the top shelf. It was the one thing Grandma had insisted I take from the house the week before she passed. "Everything in here is for you, Clara," she had whispered, her voice thin as paper. "Just for you." I had looked through it once before. It was filled with old photo albums, her favorite poetry books, and bundles of letters tied with ribbon. It was a box of memories. But as I lifted the lid this time, something felt different. I ran my hand along the velvet lining at the bottom. My fingers brushed against a seam that didn't feel right. It was a false bottom. My heart started to beat a little faster. I carefully worked my fingernails under the edge and lifted it up. Underneath, lying flat in a recessed compartment, was a thick manila envelope. My name was written on the front in my grandmother's shaky but elegant script.
Clara.
Just my name. My hands trembled as I picked it up. It was heavy, official. I pulled out the contents. The first thing I saw was a legal document, a quitclaim deed. I read the words, my eyes scanning the page. It was the deed to the entire estate. The house, the land, everything. And it was signed over, in its entirety, to me. The transfer date was 6 months before she died. Behind the deed was a handwritten letter. I recognized her stationery, the one with the little bluebird in the corner. "My dearest Clara, if you are reading this, it means the time is right. I know you must be confused, and maybe a little hurt by my secrecy. I am so sorry for that, but I had to protect you, and I had to protect our home. This house is more than just wood and nails. It is a place of love, of memories. It is where you took your first steps, and where I hope to take my last breath. I have watched my daughter, your Aunt Carol. I have seen the greed in her eyes. She looks at this home and sees only its monetary value. She sees it as a tool for control, a way to make herself important. She would use it to reward those who flatter her and punish those who do not. That is not what this family is supposed to be about. That is not what this home is for. You, my dear girl, are the only one who ever understood that. You took care of me not out of duty, but out of love. You saw me, the person, not the owner of a valuable property. You loved this house for the right reasons. For the roses that climb the trellis, for the creaky third step on the stairs, for the way the sun hits the kitchen in the morning. That is why I am giving it to you. It is yours. Legally, completely, and irrevocably. I have trusted my lawyer, Mr. Henderson, to ensure everything is in order. He knows my wishes. Do not let them bully you. Do not let them make you feel small. This is your home now. Protect it. Use it to bring the family together in love, not in obligation. Be strong, my Clara. You have more strength than you know. All my love, Grandma Eleanor. I read the letter 3 times, tears blurring the words. The pain from being excluded was replaced by a wave of understanding and a cold, hard resolve. My grandmother had seen this coming. She had known what Carol was capable of, and she had given me the power to stop her. This wasn't just about a party anymore. It was about honoring my grandmother's last wish. It was about protecting her legacy from the very person who was supposed to be its steward. The reunion was in 3 weeks. Aunt Carol thought she was solidifying her reign as queen of the family. She had no idea she was about to be evicted from the castle. The first thing I did the next morning was call Mr. Henderson. I had his number from when I helped Grandma with her paperwork. He was an old-fashioned lawyer, kind and thorough, and someone she had trusted for over 40 years. His secretary put me through immediately. "Clara, how lovely to hear from you," he said, his voice warm and familiar. "How are you holding up?" "I'm doing all right, Mr. Henderson," I said. "Thank you for asking. I'm calling about my grandmother's estate." "Of course," he said. "What can I help you with?" I took a deep breath. I found something. A box she left for me. Inside, there was a deed to the house. It's signed over to me. There was a soft chuckle on the other end of the line. "Ah," he said. "She told me you would find it when you needed it most. I must admit, I was wondering when you might call." Relief washed over me. It was real. So, it's legitimate? I asked. Completely, he confirmed. Your grandmother was very clear, very determined about her wishes. We had several meetings about it. She wanted to ensure the property would be safe with you. The deed was executed and filed with the county clerk's office the very next day. Legally speaking, Clara, that house has been yours for over a year. Why didn't you tell me? I asked, a little bit of the hurt creeping back into my voice. I've been watching my aunt take over, acting like she owns the place. Those were your grandmother's specific instructions, he explained gently. She said, Clara is not a fighter, but she is strong. She will know the right time to use this. Let her find her own strength. She didn't want to place that burden on you while you were grieving. She trusted your instincts. Her words, relayed by him, made my spine straighten. She was right. I wasn't a fighter. I hated confrontation. But this was different. This was about defending my grandmother. My aunt is planning a big family reunion there next month, I told him. She's acting as the host, the owner. She didn't even invite me. Mr. Henderson was silent for a moment. Well, he said, his voice turning firm. Then it sounds like the right time has arrived. What do you plan to do? I'm going to go to the party, I said, the plan forming in my mind as I spoke. And I'm going to introduce myself as the hostess. A sound plan, he said. If you need anything from me, a letter confirming the authenticity of the documents, or if you'd like me to be present, just say the word. A letter would be great, I said. Just in case. I'll have it messengered to you by the end of the day, he promised. After hanging up, I felt a new sense of purpose. This wasn't just a reaction anymore. It was a strategy. My next step was to understand exactly what Aunt Carol had been doing. I called her husband my Uncle Robert. He was a passive man who let Carol make all the decisions. He was her echo. Uncle Robert, hi, it's Clara, I said when he answered. Clara. What a surprise, he said, sounding flustered. He knew I wasn't invited. The whole family knew. I was just calling about Grandma's house, I said, keeping my tone light and inquisitive. I know Carol has been managing everything, which must be a huge amount of work. I was wondering what the long-term plans are for it. He cleared his throat. Well, Carol is handling all of that. It's a big responsibility, a very big property to manage. We have to think about the taxes, the upkeep. It's a lot. I'm sure it is, I said sympathetically. So what is she thinking? Is she going to sell it? Oh, no, he said quickly. Of course not. It's the family estate. Carol wants to keep it for everyone to use. We're actually thinking of renting it out for weddings and events. It could generate some income to cover the expenses. He said it with such authority, as if it were a settled fact. He truly believed they had the right to make these decisions. That's an interesting idea, I said. Did Grandma ever mention her plans for the house to you? Before she passed. She left it to the family, he said with complete confidence. It was always understood. And Carol, being the eldest daughter, is the natural executor of the family's wishes. She's just doing what's best for everyone. I see, I said. Well, thank you for the information, Uncle Robert. I hung up the phone, my hand tight around the receiver. He had confirmed it. Carol had created a fiction that the entire family believed. She had positioned herself as the selfless manager of a shared asset, all while planning to turn my grandmother's home into a business. The disrespect was staggering. My quiet sadness was hardening into a cold, sharp anger. She wasn't just excluding me. She was actively erasing my grandmother's real wishes and replacing them with her own greedy ambitions. A few days later, my cousin Sarah called me. She sounded miserable. Clara, I feel so terrible about how I acted on the phone, she said without any preamble. It's okay, Sarah. You were in a tough spot, I told her. No, it's not okay, she insisted. My mom and your Aunt Carol have been talking nonstop about this reunion. It's like a royal coronation for her. And she keeps saying the meanest things about you. Like what? I asked, even though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. She's telling everyone you abandoned your grandmother in her final months. That you were only around because you were hoping for a payout from the will, and when you didn't get one, you lost interest in the family, Sarah said, her voice full of disgust. My breath caught in my throat. It was the exact opposite of the truth. I had quit my job to care for Grandma. I had used my own savings to pay for things she needed when her pension ran low. The thought of a payout had never crossed my mind. Carol was not just excluding me. She was slandering me to justify it. And there's something else, Sarah said, her voice dropping to a whisper. Aunt Carol sent out an email to everyone. She's asking for money. Money for what? I asked, my sense of dread growing. She said the property taxes are due, and the roof has a leak. She's asking every family unit to contribute $500 to an estate maintenance fund, Sarah explained. My parents already sent her the money. Sarah, can you forward me that email? I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. Of course, she said. I don't think she's being honest, Clara. Something feels really wrong about all this. You're right, I said. Something is very wrong. Thank you for telling me this. An hour later, the email was in my inbox. It was written in Carol's signature style, full of passive aggression and self-importance. As the person tasked with the enormous responsibility of managing our precious family legacy, it began, I am reaching out to ask for your support. The county has sent a very steep property tax bill, and our beloved home is in desperate need of a new roof before the winter rains. She listed her bank account details for direct deposit. The email was a lie. I knew it in my bones. I went to the county's public records website. It took me a few minutes to find the property listing for my grandmother's estate. I clicked on the tax information tab. My heart pounded in my chest as the page loaded. The records were clear. The property taxes were, in fact, past due. They were 3 months overdue. But that wasn't the shocking part. The shocking part was that the bill had been mailed out 4 months ago. Carol had known about it for months and had done nothing. She was holding on to the family's contributions while the bill went unpaid, letting penalties accumulate. There was no mention of a roofing permit, either. If there was a serious leak, there would have been a permit filed for the repair. There was nothing. She had invented the roof leak. She was scamming her own family. She was using their love for my grandmother and their connection to the house to line her own pockets. This was the final piece I needed. This went beyond family drama. This was fraud. She wasn't just being a bully, she was a thief. She was neglecting the very home she claimed to be protecting. The anger I felt was clean and pure. It burned away all my fear and hesitation. My grandmother had asked me to be strong. Now I knew I could be. I spent the next 2 weeks preparing. I made high-quality color copies of the deed. I printed out the email from Carol asking for money, and I printed the screenshot from the county website showing the delinquent tax bill. I had the certified letter from Mr. Henderson. I put everything into a large, sturdy manila envelope. This envelope was my armor. The night before the reunion, I laid everything out on my coffee table. I thought about what my grandmother had written. Do not let them bully you. For years, I had let Carol do just that. I had stayed quiet to keep the peace. I had endured her backhanded compliments and her subtle digs. I had let her make me feel small. That was over. Tomorrow, I was not going to be the quiet, overlooked niece. I was going to be the owner of the estate. I decided I needed to make one more call. I dialed the number for Mark, my cousin, Carol's son. He was the one who had posted the invitation that started all of this. He answered with a loud, "Yo." "Hey Mark, it's Clara," I said.
Oh.
"Hey," he said, his tone shifting immediately. He sounded wary, suspicious. "I just saw some of your pictures from setting up at Grandma's place. It looks like you guys are working hard," I said, my voice carefully neutral. His arrogance immediately returned. "Yeah, it's going to be epic," he bragged. "Mom's really taken charge. She's turned the place around. It's basically her house now. We're making it so much better than how Grandma kept it." The casual cruelty of his words hit me like a physical blow. "Better?" I asked, my voice tight. "What do you mean, better?" "Oh, you know," he said dismissively. "We're clearing out a lot of the old lady clutter. making it more modern, more open. We're actually thinking of selling off a bunch of the old furniture to help pay for some real renovations. My blood ran cold. He was talking about my grandmother's things. Her rocking chair, the vanity she'd had since she was a girl, the heavy oak dining table where we'd had 1,000 family meals. To him, it was just old lady clutter. "You're selling her things?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Yeah, why not? It's just old junk," he said with a laugh. "Mom says it's for the best. You gotta monetize the asset, you know? That's what smart people do. Monetize the asset." The phrase echoed in my head. They didn't see a home. They saw a line item on a balance sheet. They weren't preserving a legacy. They were liquidating it. Any last shred of doubt I had about my plan vanished. They didn't deserve that house. They didn't deserve my grandmother's memory. They deserved to be exposed. "Well, it sounds like you have it all under control," I said, my voice now calm and collected. "We do," he said, full of pride. "It's gonna be the best party this family has ever seen. Too bad you're gonna miss it." "Oh, I wouldn't miss it for the world," I said softly, and hung up before he could respond. The day of the reunion was bright and sunny, a perfect late summer afternoon. I dressed carefully, not in anything fancy, but in clothes that made me feel solid and confident. A dark pair of jeans, a simple blouse, and flat shoes. I was not a guest coming to impress. I was the owner coming to inspect her property. I drove the familiar route to the house, my hands steady on the steering wheel. I didn't feel nervous anymore. I felt a profound sense of clarity. I knew what I had to do, and I knew it was the right thing to do. I parked my car down the road, out of sight from the main driveway. I wanted to arrive on my own terms, not as another car pulling up to the party. I walked up the long, gravel driveway. The scent of pine needles and damp earth filled the air. It was the smell of my childhood. As I got closer, I could hear the sounds of the party. Music was playing, a generic pop song that felt jarringly out of place. I could hear laughter and the loud, booming voice of my Uncle Robert telling a joke. I walked around the side of the house to the sprawling back lawn that led down to the lake. That's where they were all gathered. There were at least 50 people there. A large white tent was set up, and tables were covered in checkered cloths. Mark was manning a barbecue, wearing a ridiculous apron that said Grill Sergeant, and in the center of it all, holding court, was Aunt Carol. She was wearing a flowing floral dress and a wide-brimmed hat, gesturing grandly as she talked to a group of relatives. She looked like the queen on her throne. I took a deep breath and stepped out from behind the corner of the house, onto the stone patio. I walked forward until I was standing at the edge of the lawn, in plain sight of everyone. The first person to see me was Sarah. Her eyes went wide, and she put a hand to her mouth. Then someone else noticed, and a ripple of silence began to spread through the crowd. The music suddenly seemed too loud. Someone turned it off. All the conversations died down. Every single eye turned to me. Aunt Carol turned around, a bright, fake smile on her face, ready to greet a new guest. When she saw it was me, the smile vanished. It was replaced by a mask of pure, undiluted fury. Her face hardened, and her eyes narrowed into slits. "Clara," she said, her voice sharp and loud, cutting through the silence. "What are you doing here? You were not invited." I kept my voice calm and even, letting it carry across the lawn. "I know, Aunt Carol," I said. "But I have a right to be here. I am here now. This is happening." "You have no right," she snapped, taking a step toward me. Her public persona was cracking. "This is a private family event. I think you should leave." "No," I said simply. I took a few steps forward, closing the distance between us. I could feel the weight of the envelope in my bag. "I don't think I will." The air was thick with tension. Everyone was frozen, watching the confrontation unfold. Uncle Robert bustled forward, trying to play the peacemaker, or at least her enforcer. "Now, Clara, let's not make a scene," he said, his tone condescending. "Your aunt made it clear this was a curated guest list. You should respect that." "I don't have to respect her wishes. I said, looking past him to lock eyes with Carol. Not in my own house. The words dropped into the silence, like stones in a pond. A collective gasp went through the crowd. I saw my father, Carol's brother, take a step forward, a look of utter confusion on his face. Carol let out a harsh, barking laugh. It was a terrible sound. Your house? Are you delusional? This is the family estate, she declared, her voice rising with each word. No, it isn't, I said. I reached into my bag and pulled out the manila envelope. My hands were perfectly steady. I opened the clasp and pulled out the first document, the copy of the deed. This house, I said, my voice ringing with authority, belongs to me. Grandma Eleanor signed it over to me and me alone, 6 months before she passed away.
Sole ownership.
I held it up for everyone to see. The silence was absolute now. You could have heard a pin drop on the grass. Carol's face, which had been red with anger, was now completely white. She looked like she had seen a ghost. That's a lie, she screeched, her voice cracking. You're lying. You forged that document. Did I? I asked calmly. I reached back into the envelope and pulled out the second paper. Then I suppose I also forged this certified letter from Mr. Henderson, Grandma's lawyer for 40 years, confirming the transfer and its legitimacy? I held it up next to the deed. He remembers the day very well. He said Grandma was very clear about her wishes. Carol was sputtering now, her eyes darting around at the faces of our family members, looking for an ally. She found none. They were all staring at her, their expressions a mixture of shock and dawning suspicion. And what about this? I said, my voice growing stronger. I pulled out the printed email chain. Did I forge this email from you, Aunt Carol? The one where you asked the entire family to send you $500 for property taxes and a new roof. I didn't wait for an answer. I pulled out the final document, the screenshot from the county website. Because that's funny. I checked with the county. The taxes are 3 months overdue. You haven't paid a cent. You just kept the money. All of it. My father stepped forward, his face pale. He walked up to me and took the papers from my hand. He read the deed, then the lawyer's letter, then the email from his sister. His eyes scanned the tax record. The whole family watched him, waiting for his verdict. He looked up from the papers, not at me, but at Carol. Carol, he said, his voice heavy with disbelief and disappointment. Is this true? She stared at him, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. No words came out. She had been so powerful just moments before, and now she was completely undone, exposed in front of the very people she had worked so hard to control. Mark, her son, finally snapped out of his shock. He strode toward me, his face twisted in an ugly sneer. You can't do this, he yelled. We've been making plans. Mom has been working on this for a year. I looked him straight in the eye.
My voice was ice.
You mean your plans to sell off Grandma's furniture to monetize the asset? I said, throwing his own words back at him. Those plans are over. You are not selling one single thing from this house. His face fell. He knew he was caught. I turned my back on him and addressed the rest of the family. My voice was clear and strong. I didn't have to shout. They were all listening intently. My grandmother left me this house for a reason, I said. She left it to me because she knew I would protect it. She knew I loved it for what it was, a home full of memories, not a business opportunity. She left it to me because she knew Aunt Carol would do exactly what she has done. Lie to you, steal from you, and use this place as a weapon. I let that sink in for a moment. Then I turned my gaze back to the trio of culprits, Carol, Robert, and Mark. They stood huddled together, looking small and defeated. The party is over, I said, my voice leaving no room for argument. I want you to pack up your things. I want you to take down this tent. And then I want you off my property.
Now.
For a moment, nobody moved. Then, the chaos began. One of my uncles, the husband of Carol's sister, marched right up to her. Where's my $500, Carol? He demanded, his voice booming. Another cousin joined in. And mine. You told me the roof was about to collapse. Carol just stood there, speechless, as the family she had tried so hard to rule over turned on her. Uncle Robert tried to step in, saying, "Now, let's all just calm down," but my father cut him off. "No, Robert," he said, his voice firm. "You don't get to say anything. You stood by and let her do this." Humiliated and exposed, Carol, Robert, and Mark began to gather their things. They didn't speak a word. They moved with a slow, heavy shame. The rest of the family watched them in silence. Some looked angry. Some looked sad. All of them looked at me with a new kind of respect. As they started taking down the tent, my father walked over to me. He wrapped his arms around me in a tight hug. "I am so sorry, Clara," he whispered into my hair. "I had no idea. She can be very convincing. I should have paid more attention. I should have stood up to her years ago. I am so proud of you." I hugged him back, a wave of emotion washing over me. "I just did what Grandma wanted," I said. After the Disgrace trio had packed their cars and driven away in a cloud of dust and humiliation, a strange atmosphere settled over the party. The guests, my family, didn't quite know what to do. Some started to pack up their own things, assuming the event was canceled. I stepped onto the patio and raised my voice. "Please," I said. "Everyone, please stay. The party isn't over. It's just under new management." A few people smiled. The tension began to ease. "There's plenty of food," I continued. "And this is, after all, a family reunion. It's what Grandma would have wanted. For us to be here, together." Slowly, people began to relax. The music was turned back on, but this time, someone put on Grandma's old jazz records. The sound was soft and fit the house perfectly. My cousin Sarah came over and gave me a fierce hug. "I am so glad you did that," she said, her eyes shining. "You have no idea how long we've all been dealing with her." She was holding this house over our heads, making everyone feel like they owed her something. "Not anymore," I said, smiling. Later, another uncle, a quiet man who rarely spoke up, approached me while I was getting a glass of water from the kitchen. "Clara," he said, looking at the floor. "About that money for the roof. I sent it to her too. How do I get it back from her?" I looked at him with sympathy. "That's between you and Carol now," I said gently. "Her finances are not my responsibility." It was a hard line to draw, but a necessary one. I was not going to be the one to clean up her mess. She had made her bed, and now she had to lie in it, along with everyone who had enabled her. He nodded, understanding.
He knew I was right.
The rest of the afternoon was surprisingly pleasant. People came up to me, one by one, to talk. They shared memories of Grandma Eleanor. They told me stories I had never heard before. It felt like we were reclaiming the house, filling it with the love and respect it deserved. For the first time in over a year, it felt like Grandma's home again. By the time the sun started to set, everyone had gone home. My father and I were the last ones there. We sat on the porch swing, the same one Grandma and I had spent countless hours on, and watched the fireflies begin to blink in the twilight. "What are you going to do with the place?" he asked quietly. "I'm going to live here," I said without hesitation. "I'm going to take care of it. And the doors will always be open to family."
To the real family.
He nodded, a sad smile on his face. "She picked the right person," he said. The next day, the first thing I did was call a locksmith. I had every single lock on the house changed. As the locksmith worked, I walked through the quiet rooms. The house felt like it was breathing a sigh of relief. I ran my hand along the dusty surface of the oak dining table. I sat in Grandma's rocking chair by the fireplace. It was all safe now. It was all mine. I spent the weekend cleaning. Not the frantic, modernizing purge that Mark had talked about, but a slow, loving restoration. I dusted every piece of furniture. I polished the silverware. I found a box of Grandma's photo albums and spent an entire afternoon looking through them, remembering. This was not an asset to be monetized. This was a legacy to be cherished. A week later, my phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. I opened it. The message was short and simple. You will regret this. It was from Carol. I didn't feel a flicker of fear. I didn't feel anger. I just felt a quiet sense of finality. I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. I blocked her number and deleted the message. The war was over. I had won. Life at the estate was peaceful. I settled into a new routine. I worked from home. My desk overlooking the garden my grandmother had so lovingly tended. I learned the names of the birds that came to the feeder. I fixed the creaky third step on the stairs. I paid the property taxes. The silence from Carol's side of the family was deafening, and it was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. They had lost their power, their status, and their fake castle. They had tried to make me small, to erase me from the family. But in the end, they were the ones who had vanished. My grandmother had given me a home, but she had also given me something more important: the strength to stand up for myself. I stopped waiting for invitations. I stopped trying to keep a peace that only ever benefited others. They had finally learned what it feels like to be on the outside looking in, and I was finally truly home.